And we begin at the United Nations with the failure of yet another resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. This one was put forward by the United States, which had vetoed the others. The U.S. proposal was vetoed, though, by Russia and China. Moscow accusing Washington of, quote, a hypocritical spectacle that does not pressure Israel. Well, following the vote, France said that it would resume work on another ceasefire resolution to present to the Security Council. Now, that vote at the UN came as the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken wrapped up a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It only lasted about 40 minutes. Relations between the two allies have been increasingly tense, with the U.S. urging Israel to get more aid into Gaza and to reconsider its planned assault on the southern town of Rafah. Benjamin Netanyahu said he told Blinken that Israel would go into Rafah with or without U.S. support. Take a listen.
We have no way to defeat Hamas without getting into Rafah and eliminating the battalions that are left there. I told Blinken that I hope to do that with the support of the United States, but if we need to, we will do it alone.
For more on those latest developments, I'm joined here in the studio by our international affairs editor, Angela Diffley. Angela, hello.
Hi, Alison.
Let's start with this UN Security Council vote. What's behind those vetoes from Russia and China?
Well, diplomats, before any draft resolution is put forward, consult very, very considerably with one another. So people know each other's positions more or less beforehand. What is significant and what remains significant about this resolution is the fact that for the first time, the United States has not vetoed a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Until now, they have, and this remains the most significant aspect of this. China and Russia gave various reasons. You mentioned there that they suggested that it allowed a certain impunity for Israel, that it showed enormous duplicity on the part of the United States. They said the United States, when it suits them, condemns this sort of action. When it doesn't condemn this sort of action. That goes for pretty much every country in the world. I think you could say that. They also, the United States point out to the fact that China and Russia did not like the fact they refused to condemn Hamas, according to the United States. And that is one of the reasons why they chose not to back this resolution. What happens now is that France will try to put forward a resolution which won't be very, very different because there isn't an enormous amount of room for manoeuvre to get people to agree on anything in the UN. But as so often, it's who is putting forward the resolution that matters. It's perfectly possible that Russia and China will also choose to veto that. In any case, these resolutions are not, they send a strong message, but time and again, countries have ignored UN resolutions. It doesn't change much.
That's for the negotiations are what matters most. Speaking of those, Netanyahu, Angela, seems as determined as ever to go into Rafah. Has Blinken's visit achieved anything? Does the U.S. pull any weight with Israel right now?
Well, there are two things going on. Blinken has, of course, already visited Egypt and Saudi Arabia on this tour. That is part of his after-the-war negotiations. This visit, Blinken's visit to Netanyahu, was also about conveying Joe Biden's increasing impatience with Netanyahu. Joe Biden set a lot of store in his very, very long, decades-long relationship with Netanyahu, and he hoped that would really help in persuading Netanyahu. It is thought now, from talking to contacts in Washington, that he's pretty much given up on that personal relationship, and Blinken was there to convey that. Netanyahu, and it has to be said, all of the war cabinet and much of Israel do think that they should go into Rafah with or without US support. There is talk of a more surgical operation which would involve encircling Rafah, and the Israelis now have a great deal of intelligence, so there is talk that it might be done with much less damage to civilians. There is also talk that the Israelis are talking to business people about distributing aid, because a lot of the aid, it's been difficult to get it to the right people, any humanitarian aid that is getting in, and Israel is said to be quietly working on some sort of plan there. Where Washington does have some clout still is that looking to whenever this war ends, Washington is hoping with Israel, they are hoping to pursue that Saudi-Israel normalization plan. Bibi Netanyahu is very keen for that to succeed. And as part of that, Washington would promise Saudi Arabia help with civilian nuclear facilities. If Washington decides not to help that along, then that is a big blow to Benjamin Netanyahu. So that is one area where they still have significant leverage, as well as, of course, sending different kinds of weapons to Israel.